Hello everyone, this is part 8 of What If Naruto Married Ino Till Death, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Previously, he wanted this to last forever. It was quiet and he felt comfortable around her. He knew it in his heart that this girl was the one for him, that whatever happens she would obtain his heart no matter what. He developed the courage to grab her hand into his and rubbed it soothingly. He is indeed in eternal bliss. Naruto stood outside of the building at the gates waiting for Ino. She had asked him to wait for her so they could walk together. Flashback. Hey Naruto, Ino said, causing the spiky blonde to pull his attention to her, do you mind waiting for me after school? Naruto just stared and for a moment nothing entered his ears, but after a few seconds, it came through ringing clear inside his ears. His eyes widened and his lips twitched into a large smile. Of course, he said shortly as he squeezed tightly for a brief moment with his hand in hers. She smiled at him and couldn't help the feeling of wanting to be needed by someone who would be so devoted to her. Okay then, she said softly, let's meet in front of the gates, okay? K, he responded with a smile as he stared deep into those light blue eyes. She smiled back and the alarm rung for class. He felt a bit saddened by the departure, but he was also excited because he'd be able to see her again. End flashback. He couldn't help the smile that stayed in place, the excitement beating in his chest, and the nervousness in his mind. He kept looking around anxiously for any signs of her beautiful blonde hair or mesmerizing blue eyes. For a second, he heard his name called and thought it would be the blonde, but saw his buds walking to him instead. He looked crestfallen for a second before his smile replaced it. Hey guys, he said, waving slightly at him, what's up? You, Kiba said with a smirk, so, you and the goddess, together. Naruto blushed a deep crimson and his friends just smiled at the reaction. Kiba couldn't help the smirk forming his lips. Naruto deserves this, he thought happily until he realized the other part, even if we may s in the process. Congratulations Naruto, Lee exclaimed happily as he ran up to Naruto to give him a side hug. Lee is a happy man and seeing his friend find love is something to be celebrated. Thanks Lee, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. Are you sure you want this? Neji asked. To be sure, he was worried and has the right to be. This may just bring trouble, Gaara emphasized. Yeah, Naruto breathed out, smiling genuinely at them. Hey blons. A voice shouted out as it neared said person. The guys turned to see the man from earlier, Kai, who picked a fight with him earlier, and Jin, who he had gotten hurt from. Naruto immediately sent glares and curled his hands into fists. Kiba recognized Kai and copied his blonde friend. Neji, Lee, and Gaara looked at their friends only to understand their pose. What did I tell you? Kai had said once they reached them. His lips held a wicked smirk while Jin stared at the others. So, is this your posse? He asked dubiously with an eyebrow arched. What the hell do you guys want? Naruto asked out angrily, ready to attack. Isn't it obvious? Jin asked, laughing while Kai continued, I owe you a spar, didn't I? Naruto could see the anger in their eyes as their fists begin to take its form. Naruto is ready now, and since that bastard Jin doesn't have his stupid friends to hold him back, then he would punch him out. Kai also didn't come with anyone, and that made the blonde suspicious. Why isn't there more? He wondered but kept his face straight. If a fight is what you want, then let's do it. Kiba seethed out with a smirk across his face. The brunette wants to s them to shred and would do much more unbearable things that a weak appet wouldn't be able to handle. He wanted to jump and plant a fist in either one of their faces, but something about the way Naruto's stance slacked a little caught him off guard. Come on, what are you waiting for, blondes? Kai ushered on willingly, are you that weak? He finished with a look of disgust. Maybe he thinks he's too good for us because he's going out with our goddess, Jin assumed, cracking his knuckles. Oh, maybe, Kai said amusedly. Well, if that's true, then you can have her, he said with a look of hatred toward Naruto, because she is just a slut. Slut. Naruto heard that word and his fist immediately found itself in the face of Kai's. Kiba also threw his punch at the other and both tumbled backwards holding their lips and cheeks. Don't you dare say that! Naruto screamed out, taking deep breaths. The two men just smirked knowingly at one another as they laughed at their opponents. It was as if there was an inside joke that they didn't know. You have no idea how much of a, Kai started, but before he could finish his face collided with Naruto's fist once again and then stretched to hit Jin as well. What did I? Naruto started, but before he could finish, he saw her hair in the corner of his eyes. He turned sharply with his eyes wide, praying that she didn't see what he had just done or hope she heard what they said so it wasn't his fault. But as his eyes met her blue ones, all he saw was confusion and a hint of regret. What have I done? He thought to himself as he turned back to the guys, then back at his lover. She was running late, meeting him only because Winry wanted to speak to her about something and it took much longer than she would have liked. So she hurried over to the gates saying her farewells to her classmates, friends, and acquaintances. As she head over to the spot, she noticed a large crowd of people hovering at a certain side. At first she thought it might have been someone falling or something else, but she never wanted to think it would be a fight. She didn't want it to be someone she knows, and she never expected to see golden blonde spiked up as patches on her head. Naruto, she thought. She walked a bit into the circle, but not toward the front quite yet. She needed to make sure if it was him, and when she saw the anger in those dark blue eyes and his fist flying, she realized that it was indeed a fight. Ino was confused at what had just happened and wondered if it was Naruto who had started the whole thing. She didn't know who he hit, but she sure saw blood spilled and that was enough to make her feel differently for the blonde. Then his eyes met hers and she couldn't help but stared confused. She didn't realize the sadness and the embarrassed features running across his eyes until he looked at her once again. She remembered a time when the person she loves had a fight. She regretted it, though it had no connection to him. Flashback. Roy, a man with a bundle of hair tied behind his head, called out angrily. The said person turned to face him with a solemn look that read, "What the hell do you want? What the hell did you do to her?" He screamed, grabbing his collar. To who? He asked, bemused, and made the offender more on the edge. You bastard, you freaking used her, you dumb, he seethed out until Roy interrupted. Shikamaru, you should calm down, he said with a smirk as he spotted a beautiful blonde far away. It won't be good. I don't care if it's good or not. You bastard, you think you can use her like a piece of trash? Shikamaru asked angrily, pulling his face in closer. I'll show you to not do that to her. Oh yeah, what are you planning to do? Hit me? He asked, amused, and it snapped Shikamaru into punching him square in the face and continued by punching him a couple more times as he laid there taking in the beating. Shika, a small voice caught his attention and he turned to see wide blue eyes. He then looked at the beaten face of Roy only to see a smirk appearing on his face. Bastard, he mumbled before grabbing Ino lightly on the wrist and pulling her away. End flashback. It's happening all over again and she felt the immense deja vu occurring. So as she looked into his eyes, she felt regret. It wasn't because of Naruto, nor was it because of Shika or Roy. She just hates fight and she just hates blood in general. Her eyes focused again to see Naruto's head drop, so she walked closer, curious of who he fought with. The crowd backed away slowly as they noticed the popular blonde walking through. Some stared at her with surprise and others stared in annoyance. She ignored them all as she continued through the crowd only to see two men she fairly knows. What is going on? She asked, a bit more confused than she hoped to. Ino, Kai said as he rubbed his swollen cheek. I don't know what is going on, he said innocently. My beautiful goddess, Jin said, bowing honorably to her. What are you doing here? Ino said, causing him to stand back up. He just stared at her sadly with an obvious frown upon his lips. What? He started, you still haven't forgiven me. He said sadly, and Naruto wondered what he did. What you did, she begins, is something I can't forget, she said lowly as her memories rushed back. Flashback. You are so beautiful, the LD man said. Ino just looked at him with a soft smile upon her lips. Thank you, she returned. You don't look too bad yourself, she finished with a wink and a playful smile. His hands touched hers and she could feel the electric shock running through her veins. She couldn't help looking into his eyes that shines and his rugged edginess that draws her to him. I love you, the words came out softly from his lips. Ino blinked a couple of times before the words actually hit her. The heat ran up to her cheeks and her lips quirked upwards. Really? She asked questioningly. Of course, Jin said as he leaned in to kiss her. She accepted it and kissed back. She wonders if maybe she could fall for this man like he had done with her already. She smiled into the kiss and hoped that it'll last. End flashback. Ino couldn't help the frown appearing upon her face as she looked away. She thought that maybe Jin could be the man she would spend her lifetime with, but was she wrong? She never knew how obsessive, how threatening, how crazy the guy was. He was forcing her to let all her friends go, for just him. She would never leave her friends, never. Ino, a voice called through her thoughts and she turned to look at who it was. Previously. Ino, a voice called through her thoughts and she turned to look at who it was. You okay? Kiba asked, a bit concerned by the faraway look she had on. She nodded her head and offered a weak smile before turning to face the two offenders again. Kiba, on the other hand, looked toward his blonde friend to see his head hung low and it looked like he would fall face forward into the cemented ground. Ino. Another voice screamed through the crowd to reveal the owner, Shikamaru. Shika, Ino whispered out as she saw him. He walked up to her and grabbed her wrist lightly. He turned to glare at the two offenders before walking away with Ino behind him still dazed. Damn, Kai said as he crossed his arms watching Ino's departing figure. Ino, Jin whispered a bit softly as he could feel the immense regret and twitching fingers that wished to tangle in her hair. Naruto, Gaara called out as he stepped closer to his blonde friend, you okay? Naruto made no movements but kept his face down. It's your entire fault, someone called out into the crowd. Naruto's head snapped out and turned sharply toward the voice. Yeah, it's your fault. Another called and the crowd began screaming and yelling as it surrounded the small group of friends. What the hell is wrong with you guys? Kiba screamed out, confused and angry. Stupid blonde. You should have left everything the same. Someone screamed over the other noises. You ruined everything. Another voiced out. Go back to the streets, you bastard. Someone screeched. Yeah. The others agreed and the crowd grew closer as they pushed an unsuspecting Kiba, Lee, Neji, and Gaara away from the safety net near Naruto. What the? Kiba called out as he stumbled backwards from the crowd. Damn, a riot. Neji yelled out as the crowd pushed them farther away. Kiba called out as he tried to push back into it, but that felt like fighting against a raging current. Naruto. He screamed out worriedly and aggravatingly. He felt useless because he wasn't able to help his friend anymore since he is so far away. Naruto on the other hand wasn't able to focus, so many faces were up in his face and pushing him back and forth. He would hit them, or maybe even push them back, but he couldn't. He felt numbed like his body was just some sort of doll being thrown around. Her face is forever intact into his mind. He felt a deep pain in his abdomen and his mind became foggy and lost. Naruto stumbled to the floor with his arms across his stomach as if to suppress the force of numbness. His legs gave out as his knees hit the floor hard. Kiba, Lee, Gaara, and Neji couldn't see the blonde locks anymore and was frantic. What the hell happened? Is Naruto okay? What the hell is going on? Get out of my way. Kiba screamed as he pushed those in front of him forcefully. He was making a path to get to his best friend who he can't seem to find. I'm coming, buddy. Hang in there. Kiba screamed inside, running as fast as he could through the crowd of mobs. Naruto felt his body slump to the floor and lay lifelessly. He felt immobile, or maybe he was, but he didn't care. He felt his whole life ended as he saw into those sky blue eyes. He only wanted to cry but he wouldn't. He felt kicks to his ribs, back, head, legs, and anywhere else they could kick him as his back faced the sky. The darkness was creeping closer to him and he openly accepts it. So he closed his dull blue eyes as he heard someone calling out his name, but he couldn't fight the darkness any longer, so it swallowed him whole. Previously. The darkness was creeping closer to him and he openly accepts it. So he closed his dull blue eyes as he heard someone calling out his name, but he couldn't fight the darkness any longer, so it swallowed him whole. Shikamaru was still holding onto Ino's small wrist firmly, yet not to the point that it hurts. He was walking, or dragging, her home after what he saw and knew that they need to talk. Ino on the other hand, was still thinking about Naruto and the fight. What was Jin doing there? Why was Naruto so ashamed? What really is going on? She blinked a couple of times, feeling a small squeeze on her wrist, to notice Shikamaru glancing at her with a worried look. She smiled reassuringly and decided that her blonde friend would be fine. Temari was walking out a store that she had gone to for an item she ordered, only to see something from the corner of her eyes. She almost screamed, but the sound of her heart breaking took her voice away. She saw the pineapple head holding hands with the platinum blonde. She notices him looking at her and her smiling at him adoringly as they walked on. The sandy blonde dropped her item and it hit the floor with a small thud. She stared at them a bit longer before they turned the corner. She slowly lifts her item off the ground and held it close to her as she turned to walk away. I knew it, she said softly as her eyes began to water. Shikamaru and Ino reached her house and headed inside, only to see her father on the couch asleep. My father's home, Ino said, a bit more surprised than confused. Shika headed to her room and she followed after locking the front door. She entered her room to see him in his famous thinking pose. She almost huffed at him, but decided otherwise. She sat beside him on her bed and looked out of her small window. She felt the bed shift slightly, so she turned to look at her friend, who was now staring at her. What's wrong, Shika? Ino asked worriedly. The fight, what happened? Shikamaru asked, but commanded. I got there after it was over, Ino explained as he stared intently at her. Why was Jin there? The pineapple head asked as he sat straight. I dunno, Ino said honestly as she looked back toward the window with a soft sigh. I noticed, Shikamaru began as he looked toward the window as well. They were hurt while Naruto wasn't. He then looked toward his friend again. I think they want to get him expelled. But why? Ino said, shocked written obviously across her face. Shikamaru looked away from her to the window once again. He closed his eyes and thought about what he would say next. Ino wasn't patient at the moment since she really needed to know why. She grabbed Shikamaru by his shoulders and shook him softly. Why, Shika? Is it because of me? Ino assumed as her eyes looked hopefully at her good friend. Shikamaru stared at her deep blue eyes for a minute before he gave off a deep sigh. Maybe, he stated, noting that her hands left his shoulders and her head hanging low. What should I do? She asked softly as her hands clasped one another on her lap. Shikamaru honestly have no idea what to say to her. He placed his hand on her shoulder and she fell into his shoulder. He rubbed her arm soothingly as he fell back with her in tow. She was confused, no, sad. He could tell, and though he was a genius, he isn't the genius in everything. He stared at the ceiling, hoping that the texture of it would spell out the answer they both are looking for. They lay there for a while before Ino sat up slowly. I'll ask him. The small determined voice entered his ears, causing him to sit up beside his blonde friend. Ask him what? He asked, interested. She turned to offer him a smile, but said no more. He on the other hand knows her more than he knows himself. The talk that she would have is going to be a break it or make it conversation, and he only hopes it ends well, for her sake. Shika, Ino said again softly, why aren't you going after Temari? Shikamaru was quiet for a while before he spoke. Because. Because what? Ino shouted, angry at her best friend. You have to go after her. You don't have to shout, Shikamaru mumbled angrily as his hands covered his ears. But Shika, Ino began as her voice lowered, I know you love her. I do. Then why? Because. You love her. I just don't know, Shikamaru admitted sadly as he placed his head onto his hand and his elbow balanced on his thigh. Shika, Ino said softly as she hugged him comfortingly, go to her and explain everything. She then stopped and looked at him with a gleam in her eyes. Or I will, she ended with a grin which only means trouble. Shikamaru's smirk appeared across his lips and he pushed her off him gently. No, I'll do it myself, he replied. If you do it, I might end up being a slave or something, he mumbled out the rest. You got it. Ino sat up laughing out loud. Ino. The door opened forcefully only to reveal her, just awaken, father. Sorry daddy, Ino apologized with Shikamaru bowing apologetically. It's okay, Inoiki mumbled as he rubbed his eyes gently before it went wide. Are you excited for the date? Her father asked happily as he went to go hug his loving daughter. Yeah I am, Ino white lied. Good, it'll be this weekend okay? Her father asked, pecking her cheek. Ino nodded and he left saying that he needed to head out. As they heard the front door close, Ino and Shikamaru looked at one another and sighed mutually. Naruto's eyes opened to see darkness before colors entered his vision. Everything was still blurry and he had to blink a few times before things began to come into focus. Naruto, he heard someone say. He turned his head slightly to the left to see a worried look on the person's face. He then turned back to his original position and stared aimlessly at the ceiling. His body hurts. He could feel the muscle tension tightening, he could feel the pain shooting up to his head with just that small movement he just did, and he felt his whole body unmoving like a solid rock. Dude, you look like a mess. The owner of the voice sat beside him and he figured whose voice it was. Kiba, Naruto managed to say, though his voice came out husky as if it never was used. Do you remember what happened? He asked cautiously. The brunette really has no idea what to do. The bruised up eyes, swollen cheeks, bumps on his head, scratches on his arms and back, the deep scars on his cheek, Kiba felt the blame on himself for not getting to him sooner. I'm okay. The blonde's soft voice floated into the air, breaking Kiba out of his thoughts. Good, Kiba replied softly as well. The party is off, he decided to add, informing his wingman. How the hell was he going to throw a party without him? And besides, his best friend is wounded and depressed, so there is no way he was going through with it. He gave off a sigh and looked to the side of the walls where Naruto kept a picture of the two of them, arms over one another grinning at the camera. I'm sorry, Kiba began to say, not taking off his eyes from the picture, I should have gotten there sooner. Naruto didn't reply because his teeth felt like it was closing up and breathing was harder to do. He shut his eyes closed and counted to 5 to open his eyes once more. How'd I end up here? He managed to whisper. After you blacked out, Kiba started, they were still pounding you, me, Neji, Gaara, and Lee had to jump on him to stop them. He smirked unknowingly. Then the securities came and busted us up. He finished with a scratch to his head. And Ino, Naruto whispered hoarsely with his eyes filled with tears already. Kiba grabbed the cup of water and offered it to Naruto, who shook his head. Kiba placed it back on the table and gave off a soft sigh. She left already, she didn't come back, Kiba informed him softly, just get some sleep, K. Naruto nodded as best he could in his state and Kiba walked out of his room. He let his tears fall from his eyes hitting the pillow behind him. If Ino didn't return, then that means she really did regret meeting, talking, getting involved with him. He felt the pain well up in his heart and his chest heaving breathlessly. He wanted to scream but his mouth wouldn't open. He wanted to fist his hands but his muscles were in the way. So the only thing he could do is lay there, almost lifelessly waiting for the pain to stop hurting. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.